Did you know that only 2 games this weekend do not have a direct impact on playoff seeding? Well, that's why I've got to take a look at these intriguing matchups and how it impacts the playoff picture as we head into the final couple weeks of the season. But before I do, I've got to recap some of the most recent games right after. All right, I'm back on this channel after a little holiday hiatus, and boy, is there a lot to talk about. Before I get to the 2 Christmas games as well as the Thursday night clunker, here's some of the biggest takeaways from Week 16's matchups that you need to know or at least be reminded about. The Chargers got a well-needed win over the Broncos on Thursday Night Football to kick off the week. There were then 2 Saturday games. The Chiefs took down the Texans to move to 14-1, and despite it ending in a 1-score game, the Chiefs were clearly in control of that one for the majority of the entire game. Then the Ravens got revenge over the Steelers and whooped them 34-17 to overtake the top spot in the AFC North. The Falcons stomped the Giants in Michael Penix's debut to move to 8-7 and retake the lead in the NFC South after the Cooper Rush-led Cowboys shocked the Bucs on Sunday Night Football. And yeah, I was not ready for that one bit. Then the Lions gave the Bears a beatdown to remain the number 1 seed in the NFC. For now, at least. Jalen Hurts left the game with a concussion in the first quarter, and the Commanders got the dub over the Eagles 36-33, despite throwing a ton of picks or having a bunch of turnovers. The Eagles still have a path to the 1 seed, though. It's going to be an uphill climb, to say the least, because Jalen Hurts is trending towards not playing in their next game. More on them later. The Bengals then beat the Browns to stay alive in the race for a wild card spot. The Colts stayed alive as well after beating the Titans thanks to Jonathan Taylor's 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Rams beat the New York Jets and remain ahead of the Seahawks in the NFC West. The Panthers upset the Cardinals in overtime to eliminate them from the playoffs. The Vikings clutched out a win in Seattle to keep their hopes of the 1 seed alive. The Bills fell behind to the Patriots 14-0 early on, but came back and won it 24-21. They're almost certainly the 2 seed now, though Baltimore technically has a chance to catch them. The Packers then had the first shutout of the year, blowing New Orleans out 34-0 on Monday Night Football to move to 11-4. They clinched a playoff berth and are currently the 6th seed, but do have a chance to leapfrog Minnesota for the 5th spot. So that was it for the Week 16 action. Then Week 17 kicked off with the Chiefs traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, one of the 2 Christmas games on Netflix. It had a bunch of views. You could see the numbers on the screen here. Did pretty well overall. The games weren't great products, but I don't think that's going to stop the NFL from doing this again and making a piss ton of money. Anyway, the Chiefs offense was humming in this game against the Texans. Mahomes threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy led the team in receiving, combining for 16 catches, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kelce then broke Tony Gonzalez's franchise touchdown record and dunked through the goalpost to celebrate. The defense came up big as well, sacking Russ 5 times without Chris Jones playing in this game. They also forced 2 turnovers and rolled to an easy 29-10 victory, and they are now 15-1 on the season and officially clinched the 1 seed in the AFC. Now, before Wednesday, the Steelers were ahead of Baltimore in the AFC North, but after that Steelers loss, then this Ravens win, which we'll talk about here, the Steelers have fallen behind and have lost out on having a home playoff game. But as far as this next Christmas game on Netflix, it was Ravens and Texans, and Baltimore handed them quite the beatdown, dominating them 31-2, with the Texans' only points coming from a safety. Lamar Jackson sat out for most of the 4th quarter as this was a blowout, so he only attempted 15 passes for the game, but he finished with 168 yards and 2 touchdowns and also ran 4 times for 87 yards, including a 48-yard score in the 3rd quarter. And with those 87 yards on the ground, Lamar officially passed Michael Vick for the most rushing yards by a quarterback in NFL history. And considering Lamar is 27, about to be 28 years old, the fact that he's already broken it is pretty much insane, and he should have plenty of time to add to it. So the Ravens move to 11-5 and take the lead in the AFC North, as I said earlier, while the Texans drop their 2nd straight game and fall to 9-7. They've already clinched the AFC South, so they're locked into the 4 seed, but man, they do not look great at this point in time heading into the playoffs. Their O-line has struggled pretty badly this season. CJ Stroud is struggling, and the recent injury to Tank Dell is not helping anything. They did claim Deontay Johnson off of waivers recently, but even with him, the Texans are slated to play the Steelers in round 1 of the playoffs at the moment, and I think everyone in America is probably going to pick Pittsburgh to win that game. If they do end up playing, we'll see who wins because both teams are not hot at the moment. Next up, the Seahawks hosted the Bears last night on Thursday Night Football in what turned out to be one of the biggest snooze fests of the entire year. Seattle hit a field goal on their opening drive, but we didn't see another point until the Bears hit their one and only field goal of the game with 2 minutes left in the half, and they actually scored a touchdown on this drive, but a holding penalty negated that and forced them to settle for 3. Seattle then hit a field goal on their next drive to make it 6-3 before halftime, and that sadly would somehow be the final score in this one. However, there was another almost Bears touchdown later on in the third quarter. Pharaoh Brown had this ball punched out and Kyler Gordon scooped it up and brought it all the way to the end zone. The refs didn't blow the play dead, and it was initially ruled a touchdown, but upon further review, they said Gordon was down by contact after recovering the fumble. So that was that. No touchdowns, 3 field goals, no second half points, and each team only managed to reach the red zone once. This was actually the first Thursday NFL game since 1980 to score 9 or fewer points, and while the rain in this most recent game definitely played a big factor, it was still a very rough watch. But hey, for the Seahawks, a win is a win, so I'm sure they're not complaining. They needed this one big time to keep their playoff hopes alive. They still need some help, though, to make it, because if the Rams win this weekend against the Cardinals, then LA will clinch the division. Seattle's only hope is for the Cardinals to upset the Rams this week, and then Seattle would have to beat the Rams in their Week 18 matchup. And while we're on the topic of the playoffs, let's take a look at the updated playoff picture in both conferences, as well as some games taking place this weekend that could play a massive part in determining who's in and who's out. Let's start with the NFC. The Lions remain at the top, but both the Vikings and Eagles are still in play for the 1 seed. The Lions simply need to win out to secure it. The Vikings need to win out as well as they play the Lions in Week 18, so that's going to be a big game. So if the Vikings beat the Packers this week, then the Lions next week, they would actually claim the number 1 spot, which is pretty wild considering some predicted the Vikings to win less than 7 games before the season started. Next, the Eagles need both the Vikings and Lions to lose this week, and then for the Vikings to beat the Lions in Week 18. If that happens and Philly wins out, they could snag the 1 seed, but again, I think that is an unlikely scenario to play out, especially considering the fact that Hurts is trending towards not playing this week, and it's going to be Kenny Pickett more than likely. Then the Rams are the 3 seed, and I already explained what they need to do to fend off Seattle. Atlanta is currently the 4 seed with a tiebreaker over Tampa Bay, and all they need to do is, at worst, stay tied record-wise with Tampa, and they'll get in as the 4 seed. The Packers are currently number 6, but they could jump Minnesota if they win their last 2 games, and Minnesota loses both of theirs. They play each other this week, so either way, one of these teams is going to be walking away with a big win. Then finally, the Commanders are holding on to that last spot in the NFC with a 10-5 record, and they're all but certainly to stay there. They currently have a 94% chance at making the playoffs, and even if they lose to Atlanta this week, their odds would only drop to 86%. And that's it for the NFC. It's down to just those 9 teams, as the other 7 have already mathematically been eliminated. Now, for the AFC, 5 teams have already clinched playoff spots, though we could see some movement in terms of seeding. The Chiefs have clinched the 1 seed and a first-round bye. The Bills are the 2 seed at 12-3 and need to just win one of their final 2 games in order to not fall below Baltimore, who could pass them up if they win their final game against the Browns, and the Bills lose their last 2 against the Jets and Patriots. Probably not happening, but you never know. If the Ravens lose next week, though, and the Steelers beat the Bengals, Pittsburgh would then reclaim the 3 seed and Baltimore would drop to 5. Houston is locked in as the 4 seed, like I said earlier. And then again, Pittsburgh is at number 5 for now. The Chargers and Broncos round out the bracket for us as the 6 and 7 seed, with both teams sitting at 9 and 6. Both of these teams can clinch a playoff spot with a win this week. LA takes on the Patriots. Meanwhile, the Broncos are playing the Cincinnati Bengals. Believe it or not, the 7 and 8 Bengals are still alive for the playoff picture, so this is going to be a tough game for Denver to say the least. They need to beat the Broncos this week and then the Steelers next week, while also having the Broncos lose out and both the Dolphins and Colts lose at least 1 game. So yeah, they basically need a lot of help. It's pretty unlikely considering the Broncos play the Chiefs Week 18 and KC will be resting most of their starters. Now here's how the Colts can make it. They need to win their last 2 games, have the Broncos lose their last 2, and have either the Bengals or Dolphins win out as well, so that there would need to be a 3-team tiebreaker which would then be decided by conference record and would go to the Colts. So good luck with that. Then finally, here's what the Dolphins need to have in order for them to be able to get into the playoffs. They need to win out, have either the Broncos or Chargers lose their last 2 games, then have the Colts lose at least one of their final games. So yeah, definitely a lot of things need to happen for some of these teams to get in, and while they aren't mathematically eliminated, they need some luck to go in their favor this week as well as next week. It should be one hell of a week of football though, because yes, there's only 2 weeks, but this week in particular, only 2 games of the weekend do not have a direct impact on playoff seeding, and that is the Titans and Jags gag, and then the Saints and Raiders bigger gag. But check this out. Chargers, Pats, Broncos, Bengals, Cardinals, Rams, Bills, Jets, Colts, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, Bucks, Panthers, Dolphins, Browns, Vikings, Packers, Commanders, Falcons, and Lions and 49ers. All these games involve at least one team that has not been eliminated from the playoffs and is either trying to make it in, improve their playoff seeding, or hang on to their current seed. It should be a crazy way to finish the season, and I can't wait to watch it all unfold. You guys got to let me know which teams you think will make it and which teams don't in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.